Hey yo, what's up, fellas? How you doing? Welcome to the start of your week, or if you're watching this on Sunday, the start of your football day, depending on when I release this. I appreciate you all a ton, ladies, gentlemen, fellas. This is what we're going to do right now because the schedule for the NFL is all up in the air because of the little virus that's going around. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Ready? This Showdown video, as I recorded on Sunday morning, going to release it Sunday afternoon. You might be watching this on Monday. That makes sense since this is a Monday night football game. There could be a two-game slate. Right now, the Monday slate is going to have the big prize pool, right? The couple $100,000 the first. So I'm covering this. If there's a huge prize pool for the two-game slate, we can cover it on the live stream on Monday Night Football, but we're probably not going to have another video up. So there's your little preliminary look at what's to come. That the Packers and the Falcons are playing on Monday night with a gigantic total right now approaching like 55 points. Both these offenses love to score points. And for the most part, both these defenses, in my opinion, don't like to defend. We know that from the Falcons. We don't really know it yet for the Packers, but they faced teams without Michael Thomas last week. The week before that, they faced a team that didn't have Kenny Golladay and TJ Hawkinson was limited. Week 1, they faced the Vikings, and honestly, the Vikings don't look that great, and also Justin Jefferson wasn't allowed to, and at least at that point, he wasn't running as the wide receiver 2 on his team, where he might be the wide receiver 1 now. So this Packers defense, as a Packers fan, right, I'm trying to be as non-biased as possible, I think it's a little bit fluky and a little bit fraudulent, but we'll see this Monday night as there's going to be fireworks from a points perspective. So welcome everybody on the screen right now. I have up every single player if you're watching on the YouTube version. I'm going to go through with my interest. I'll fill the interest in as I go so you can kind of get a feel for where I'm going. We're going to go based on the salary range of the Showdown slate, starting with Aaron Rodgers, the most expensive, and if you could for me right now, we're about to hit 30,000 subscribers probably this week. We're about 500 away. Please do hit the like button. It lets it reach a couple more people. It takes no seconds of your time. And the big old subscribe button that just popped up on the screen. Bottom right hand corner if you're watching on your phone, if you're watching on your laptop, whatever it may be, tablet, if you're watching on TV, might have to do an extra click there. But the subscribe button helps us creators out a ton. I cannot express that enough. It really does go a long way to allowing us to reach more people, build a following, yada, 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 all those things. And it allows me to come here on a Sunday morning and get to be able to do this and produce this content for all of you free here on YouTube in the podcast version. So thank you so much in advance. This is going to be sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. And if you're not familiar, Monkey Knife Fight is a prop betting site. And right now I'm liking the over for both of the quarterbacks. There's a prop where you can put the both quarterbacks receiving yards together. Last week we liked the under on both the quarterbacks on Monday night. I like the over on both of them this week. Again, I think the Packers secondary is a little bit fraudulent right now. Yes, Jair is great, but for the most part, I think it's a little bit fraudulent. I think they have not been pressed as much. Julio and Ridley, as long as they're good to go, I like the Matt Ryan over there, and as well as I like the Rodgers over as well, even without Allen Lazard. Seems like he's going to get Devante Adams back. Aaron Jones is going to slide in again as the number 2 wide receiver and the number 1 running back. But what Monkey Knife Fight is going to be is a place you can have player props, and if you want to try it out, over-unders more or less is all those things. You want to tail that bet, then I'm going to be going with the over for both quarterbacks because life's too short to bet the under. If you want to tail me on that bad boy, you can use the promo code Vetri, my last name, Vetri. You will get a 100% deposit match up to $50. You want to put $50 in, bam, they're going to give you 50 right back. You have $100 in your account. You want to just put $10 in the minimum, tail my bet, let it linger for a little couple weeks or so, bam, you put 10 in, now you got 20 in your account. You're good for the entire year, courtesy of Monkey Knife Fight and myself. Promo code Vetri, Vetri, get you that 100% deposit match up to $50 Rooskies. Check it out, link below. So let's start this bad boy off, and I'll go through right now what I'm doing in terms of my notes and also my projections and rankings that are linked up right now down below over on Patreon. You can check them out over there for Monday Night Football. Have a bunch of exclusive content over there in terms of tools and analysis, and just the more information you have, the better your chance of winning, so be sure to check that out down below. But Aaron Rodgers for me right now, look, he's behind the number 1 offensive line through 3 weeks in terms of pass blocking, and their number 1 overall offensive line because their run blocking efficiency has been very good as well. Number 3 run blocking, number 1 pass blocking offensive line. The Falcons not getting much pressure, and their whole defense right now is kind of banged up. Secondary, a little bit of their front as well. They're number 19 in the pass rush department. Rodgers is throwing 35 times per game. He's throwing in games where they're leading by a lot, which is very good to see for a fantasy reason. And in this one, even if they're going to be leading by a lot, look, they're 7-point favorites. It doesn't mean they're going to blow the doors off of Atlanta. And I would expect for them to throw the ball at least 35 times with Rodgers yet again. He was able to touch close to those numbers last week without even having Devante Adams, and it trends like he's going to play this week. So no Allen Lazard, 8.4 yards per attempt so far for Rodgers is 6th in the league. He hasn't ran a lot yet. 5 carries for 26 yards. He hasn't had to. He's been efficient in the passing game. He's not throwing the ball as much away. So far this season, he's finished as QB2, QB15, and QB6 in the past 3 weeks. Yes, Rodgers is in play for me. I currently have him projected for 20 points, which is not the most in the slate. So even though he's expensive, he's going to be in play for me, but he's not going to be an overwhelming play. I'm going to put him as a yes because he's projected so high. As a quarterback in cash, I think he looks good. And GPPs, I think he looks fine as well. But he is 11,400. So as we go through this, you'll see that some of the cheaper options I like a little bit more. He's close to being an X, which if this is your first time watching or listening, that just means a maybe for me. Again, I'll do all my crunches on the live stream on Monday night, 5:30 p.m. for an hour Eastern time. Be sure to hit the notification bell. Be sure to set your alarms and tell your brother, your mother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle that will be live at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. Next up is Aaron Jones. And at $10,800, this is probably the price point with Draftkings trying to build in some security as if Devante Adams didn't go, so they didn't underprice Aaron Jones. Look, he's been great. The Packers offensive line, number 3 in run blocking. Atlanta is bottom half of the league in run defense, 17th overall. He's played 57% of the snaps and seen 62% of the opportunities, 50 attempts and 18 targets. So He's seeing 22.7 opportunities per game. That's elite usage. Now he has 14 red zone attempts. That's top 5 in the league. The touchdowns continue to come, and he's number 2 in overall rushing yards. He's seen 10 catches on 53 routes run. That is 18% of the target share. All of that stuff is screaming out. Aaron Jones right now is looking like a top 3 running back for fantasy in the league through the first couple of weeks. And that's true. That is actually the case right now, but he's 10,800 with Devante Adams returning. I do understand that without Allen Lazard, he'll probably still be like a priority in the passing game, but he's 10,800 more expensive than Devante Adams, who seems to be good. So right now, Aaron Jones is going to be in play for me because he does have a ceiling on him just based on his red zone usage, but he's not a yes. I would rather play some of the guys below him. He's really expensive for Devante Adams, seeming like he's going to play. Again, as of right now, it seems like Adams is going to trend and play. If he doesn't play, and for some reason after you're watching this, Adams is ruled out or doubtful, well then yes, obviously don't play Devante Adams and Aaron Jones becomes more appealing. He would move closer to a yes for me because he would very likely slide in as not just the RB1, but also the wide receiver 1 on this team. Next up, Devante Adams. So you can see pretty quickly, the Packers are expensive on this slate, so it becomes harder to stack Rodgers with Devante Adams. I mean, all of them are in the 3-figure range from their top 3 players on their team. But Devante Adams, if he's playing, he's in play for me for sure. He's trending towards playing. This is a strong spot for him. Like right now, Denard and some of these players in the secondary are banged up, but it's a bad secondary to begin with in terms of one-on-one man-to-man coverage. They've been pretty good in the zone. Like overall in coverage this year, the Falcons were used to them being a bottom 10 team. They're a top 10 team right now, but the man-to-man coverage, it has not been that good overall. We've seen DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett take advantage of this secondary in the past, right? We've even seen last week, Allen Robinson, a wide receiver 1, absolutely destroyed this secondary, and I have no reason to believe that Devante Adams can't do it. Look, Devante Adams is looking very good. In weeks 1 and 2, and he only played like half of a week in week 2 before getting hurt and sitting out, 17 catches on 20 targets, 192 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Again, that's in like 5.5 quarters of play for Devante Adams. He is going to be a pretty strong yes for me right now. He is the first guy, like even including Aaron Rodgers, that I look at and I go, yes, I want to play that player a lot right now. The super draft multipliers are not out yet. I would assume he's going to be a 1x multiplier, him and the quarterbacks, but if he's like a 1.15x multiplier, go ahead on super draft and snag that as well. Devante Adams' spot is just too good. He'll be going up against a guy named Justin Miller. I don't know who that is. And Isaiah Oliver, who has not been good since he's entered the league. He's had a couple of stretches of decency, but Devante Adams is unguardable, and now he gets a weak secondary in terms of man-to-man coverage. Next up, Matt Ryan. I'm going to have interest here. Green Bay ranks 21st in pressure and 11th in coverage. Again, I think that's a little bit fraudulent. They faced the Saints last week in Drew Brees, who has not looked great without Michael Thomas. They faced Stafford the week before that, who did not have a healthy TJ Hawkinson and had no Kenny Golladay. So I think it's a little bit fraudulent. Now they're going to face a team that, as long as they're healthy, right, the Packers can be getting really lucky and running really good if Julio and or Ridley are out. But Gage is cleared of concussion protocol. Ridley and Julio, if they are both in and healthy, this whole team is going to be set to go. I like Matt Ryan's chances right now. He's throwing the 4th most times per game at 42.7. His pass protection is not great, 20th overall, but it's enough to give him time to look downfield because he leads the league with air yards, and 419 air yards per game so far is just insane. He's thrown 18 deep attempts, which is number 2 right now in the league, only behind Aaron Rodgers, who is number 1 with 22. So expect a lot of fireworks in this game downfield. Shout out MVS, we'll get to it in a little bit. Shout out all of these receivers, especially the outside ones in Ridley and Julio for Matt Ryan. I like it a lot. He's averaging 320 yards per game. He's 7.5 yards per attempt. Both of those are above average. His yards per game is right now number 3. I like Matt Ryan. He is a yes. I prefer Matt Ryan to Aaron Rodgers. He's going to be trailing in this game. He also has a high total around 25. They're going to be underdogs, so I have to throw a little bit more. And I think he just has a better price point for $1,400 cheaper. Give me some of that. Next up is Calvin Ridley, battling with an injury right now, so keep a close eye on this. I think he'll see Jair Alexander. Some sites, some creators might think a little bit differently, but Jair Alexander usually takes a smaller wide receiver. And right now, Julio, if they both were to play, is much bigger than Ridley, and Kevin King is the bigger cornerback, so he'll probably go on Julio, which is a fantastic matchup for Julio. This matchup for Ridley against Jair, it's kind of neutral. I think Jair is the best cornerback on the Packers. He's very underappreciated in this league, so I think he can actually, maybe not shut Ridley down, but actually hold him pretty close. But Ridley sees a great red zone usage right now. He's seeing like a 30+% target share in the red zone, which is just elite. He's running 40 routes per game right now, which is number 5 overall. A 28% overall target share is very good to see. That's top 10 in the NFL. And all the opportunity, all the upside is here for him. Obviously, Julio didn't play last week, so this is going to be a little bit inflated, but he's number 1 in the league right now in air yards. He's number 1 in red zone looks. He's right now number 1 in deep targets with 10. Everything's clicking for Ridley. The problem is the price point of 9,600. Now, he's not in play for me because we know Ridley can go for 8, 100, and multiple touchdowns. So he's in play still for me. I'm not taking him out of my exposures and my opportunity to go into my optimized top 150 lineups, but he's $9,600. That's a pretty expensive price tag, especially when you see this next player in Julio Jones is $1,000 less his teammate. It makes no sense. Look, Julio, if he is healthy and going out there, this is what he's been so far. He'll have a very strong matchup against Kevin King. If they put Jair Alexander on him, he'll have like 35 pounds and 6 inches on Jair. So that's going to be a mismatch and a half, no doubt about it. 18% target share so far on 8 targets per game. You're seeing a lot right now to Julio. He's just been playing through 2 games, 16.5 yards per reception. He's had 11 catches for 181 yards. Look, this is the thing for Julio Jones. Week 2, very weird performance. It seems like he was injured, then he misses week 3, so it kind of explains his week 2 performance. In week 1, he was fine Julio, 9 catches, 100 yards, right? Over 100 yards. So $8,600 for Julio, who usually destroys the Packers, like absolutely destroys them. There's really not a coverage that they've been successfully able to implement over the last couple of years against Julio Jones. And there's really not a player that can shut him down. They're not going to double team him because of the opportunity that they have in the players in Russell Gage in the slot, and really on the opposite side, maybe in the red zone they consider it, but Julio's never really efficient or effective or really used much in the red zone. Julio Jones at $8,600 is a fantastic play. I assume he's going to be highly owned. I assume his captain ownership will be highly owned. Julio Jones should not be $1,000 cheaper than Ridley. If you want to put Ridley more expensive than Julio, I somewhat have an issue with that in this matchup, but it has to be by like $200, not $1,000. Julio Jones looks fantastic. Him and Devante Adams are looking like strong options so far that we've talked about. Next up is Todd Gurley, and only because of the opportunity do I have somewhat interest in Gurley. He's $8,200. Again, prefer Julio. Green Bay's exactly average, 16th against the run. Atlanta is 21st in run blocking. Look, he's played 55% of the snaps. He's seen 60% opportunity. Yes, Brian Hill last week was getting involved, but it was the best week that we've seen out of Todd Gurley yet, so I still think this is his backfield. So far, he's averaging 18.7 opportunities per game, 7 targets on the season, and again, like Aaron Jones, a lot of red zone work. 14 red zone attempts is going to keep him in play here. Just a 5.5% target share, 3 catches on 42 routes. He's in play for me. I'm not going to exclude him from my player pool, but it's close. It's close for me from excluding him from my player pool because right now I only have him projected for 12.8 fantasy points at his $8,200 price tag, when Julio Jones I have for 17 fantasy points. A peek behind the curtain. You can look down below on Patreon to get the rest of the projections rankings, not just for this showdown, but the other showdowns on Thursday Night Football and all the other content I produce each week for the main slates. Some other sports, NBA still going on, golf as well for projections and rankings. All that's linked down below on my Patreon, patreon.com/Sal_Vetri_. So yes, Gurley is close to being out for me. I don't expect to get an overwhelming amount of him. Next up, MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Maybe his role will increase here, right? It's yet to be seen. MVS runs on the outside. Allen Lazard runs on the outside and in the slot. Does MVS go into the slot more? He's only played 25% of his snaps in the slot so far. He's played 68% of the snaps this year. His matchup is against Miller and also Oliver, whoever he sees on the outside, are good matchups. So at $7,000, this looks like a very strong spot. A 17% target share, 20.6 yards per reception. He's number 5 in the league. The issue, he has 5 drops so far. He had 2 in week 1. He had 2 last week. This man has 5 drops through 3 weeks. That's a big concern because, yes, if you're going to play him and he gets that one opportunity to have a 40-plus yard catch, maybe a touchdown, and he drops it, and this guy's had drops now for 2 straight years, and they're just going to be forced to play him, so that's the opportunity, but that is an issue for me. Last week, we saw him get some usage as well, but Allen Lazard kind of took over for him, so now does his role increase? Does he move into the slot, or do they just slide Darius Shepard in there? Maybe a little bit of Malik Taylor into the slot. Is that all we see? Some St. Brown if he's healthy. Is that all we see? MVS, I think, is going to go over-owned here. I have him for pretty much similar overall production and value perspective as Todd Gurley. I like him more because he's a wide receiver with upside downfield potential. So right now, MVS is in play for me, but he's not going to be a yes. He's going to be a maybe still because of the fact that I don't think this is as secure of a play as it is, and I think a lot of the field is going to over-own him. He's clearly in play. He clearly has a lot of upside based on where he's being targeted downfield in a high total game. So he's in play for me. He's close to being a yes, whereas Todd Gurley is close to being a no. So don't think that they're as close. I much prefer MVS at $7,000 than Todd Gurley at $82,000. Next up, Russell Gage at $6,200. I like it. He practiced in full on Friday. He's out of the concussion protocol. He only ran 8 routes in week 3 before getting concussed. He'll see Chandler Sullivan, who's in the slot right now for the Packers. He used to be a safety. He's been pretty good in the slot so far this year for the Packers, made a couple of big plays for them in weeks 1 and week 2 before injury. And again, he got taken out of the game after 8 snaps in week 3 for Russell Gage. He's had 15 catches, 21 targets, 160 yards, and a touchdown. I have interest here at $6,200. I think he's going to run 30-plus routes. I think he's going to see a minimum of 6 targets with the upside of double-digit targets out of the slot. And the price point is just too good to ignore for somebody who plays in an offense that runs primarily 3 wide receiver sets. And even when they get in the red zone, decides to go 3 wide receiver sets and puts him on the field. He's going to be a yes for me. I don't think he has as much upside as MVS downfield in terms of MVS being your captain. I much prefer MVS over Gage if you're choosing between those two as a captain option, a mid to lower price guy. But as of right now, I do prefer Gage over the flex option. If you're just looking for somebody to get you like a consistent 12 to 15 points, I think Gage gets there more. If you're looking for somebody to win you the slate with 20-plus point upside and a huge touchdown, it's MVS based on his depth of target downfield. Next up is a tight end for the Falcons and Hayden Hurst. With Gage in, it's going to hurt Hurst a little bit. It's an average spot versus Ty Summers in Green Bay. He plays 68% of the snaps. He's pretty good right now in terms of usage. Number 6 overall with 33 routes per game, a 13% target share and 16 targets. He's seen 3 deep targets with 20-plus yards, which is tied for number 1 amongst tight ends through 3 weeks, 12.3 yards per reception, 62 yards after the catch. Look, Hayden Hurst had 1 big touchdown where it was kind of a breakaway. Nobody covered him, and he had a big touchdown catch on that. If you take that away, he really hasn't done much. He had a nice diving catch in the middle of the field week 2. Outside of that, he really hasn't done much. He's in play for me because he's on the field so much and just running so many routes, but he's not being targeted all that much. When Russell Gage is healthy, I don't know how much he'll actually have upside of like more than 5 or 6 targets. He's going to have a red zone opportunity. Got a 1-yard touchdown last week, so that's where he still stays in play. $5,400 is a lot for him. I do think he should be closer to like the upper 4s, low 5s, which maybe $5,000 flat. So he's in play, but I prefer his teammate Russell Gage. Next up is Robert Tonyan. I love Robert Tonyan. There was rumors over camp and over the offseason that he is going to work ahead of Jay Sternberger, who is dealing with an injury, and that's what we've seen. Last week in week 3, he ran 20 routes, 5 catches on 5 targets, 100% catch rate, 50 yards, and a touchdown. Now, on the season so far, through 2 weeks, 67 routes. That's 41 more than any other tight end on the team. But keep in mind, Jay Sternberger was hurt week 1. He's produced right now so far in 67 routes, 8 targets, 7 catches, 75 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So over the past 2 weeks, a lot of his production has come, mainly last week as well. Seeing a 13.5% target share, which I would expect to maybe go up now without Allen Lazard. So there's a real case to be made that, you know what, Robert Tonyan, if it's not going to be Aaron Jones as the running back working as wide receiver 2, right? It's Devante Adams if he's healthy, and then it might be Robert Tonyan over MVS in terms of middle of the field production in the slot usage. The issue is Draftkings is already on this. They already priced him at $4,600. Like, if you're going to tell me that Robert Tonyan sees 4 or 5 targets this week, I don't think he's going to always catch 100%, and I don't think he's going to always score a touchdown. So at $4,600, if he's going to be like 20+% owned, I'm just not going to have as much interest. He's in play for me right now just due to the lack of weapons that they have in the passing game and his role increasing. So if he's trending upwards and the overall usage opportunity for him is also trending upwards since Allen Lazard is out, it's hard not to like him. The problem is Draftkings already has him priced for the proper role. Like, I have him projected right now, peek behind the curtain, for a little under 9 fantasy points. That's just not going to get it done more times than not at 5,400. Obviously, if he scores a touchdown, that will get it done, but I don't know how often, 2 weeks in a row now, touchdown scoring. I don't know how much you can bet on that every single week for a tight end who doesn't have the longest track record of success in the NFL. He's in play for me. Now we can start to get to the kickers and the defenses. Look, the kickers and defenses, they'll both be in play. People might actually think, outside of popular belief, that defenses in higher scoring games are not that much of a good play. It's actually the worst when it's in average scoring games, like 45 points. Low scoring games, defenses are in play for DFS because they might actually, their 6 points might be enough if there's only like 1 touchdown in the game, right? They might actually outscore a lot of position players. High scoring games, if there's going to be, let's just say 90 attempts, 45 attempts per team in the game, they're going to be throwing a ton of times. Eventually something might go wrong. If they're going to be running like 120 or some crazy amount of plays in the game when you factor in the running plays, yeah, there might be a mistake on one of those that actually ends up in a pick 6 or a fumble return for 6, a kickoff return, any of those things. So it keeps the defenses in play. So they'll be in play for me. The Packers right now are 14th overall in defense. Their best spot right now is in coverage where they're 11th, but they're also average against the run 16th overall. We like the kickers in lower scoring games. The kickers in the last slate on Thursday Night Football, lower scoring game, they ended up both being in the winning lineup. Both had 18 points. You're not always going to see that. I don't usually allow that to happen in my lineups. Kickers are fine. I like them more in lower scoring games, so not this one. I'll set a rule to have at most 1 kicker in my lineup because look, if the kickers are going to be 4,000 and 3,800 for Koo and Crosby on this slate, I'm okay getting one of them. Like, they both score a lot of points. If they both score 10 points, like even if they both score 9 or 10 points, that's a lot for a kicker. Maybe good if you're playing cash on showdowns, which I don't recommend. But if you're factoring that compared to some of the guys that are below them in price, similar in price for Robert Tonyan, Hayden Hurst, not that much more expensive, some of the defenses, it becomes more likely for me that they don't outscore all of those other positions around them if there's going to be a lot of points. If there's a total of 8 touchdowns in the game, odds are one of the cheaper guys is getting those and outscores a kicker. So the kickers are both in play for me, but I only want to get at most one of them right now. Jamal Williams was a late ad for me to actually end up getting to. His role has not been that great. Now the Packers are number 3 in run blocking, and Atlanta is number 17 against the run. He's played 37% of the snaps and seen just 24% of the opportunities, but he is seeing 8.7 opportunities per game. Now, normally I would say, you know what, I don't want to do this, but on a showdown slate, if you're getting a guy seeing 8 opportunities per game, 21 attempts and 5 targets so far on the season, so it's hard to ignore that. But there's a big issue. He did not get hurt in week 3, and he only saw 26% of the snaps. That is a little bit of a concern for me. They kept Aaron Jones on the field more. They used Tyler Irving on end arounds a little bit more. AJ Dillon saw a couple more snaps. So he looks like, it's just 1 week, so it's hard to really determine this. Is he trending downward in his overall usage in this offense? AJ Dillon, the 2nd-round pick rookie, is he trending upward? These are concerns for me right now. He's in play at $3,000, but I don't know how much I want to get there. I'm a little bit concerned about the usage for it. It is just a 1-week trend, but I don't think enough people are going to look at that, and I think more people will put him in their lineups. Again, with no Allen Lazard, they might just run into having to use Jamal Williams a lot more, who's a pretty strong pass catcher, finished top 5 and overall top 3 actually in overall running back grades for PFF last year in passing game role. So he's a very good pass catcher. So if they put Aaron Jones in the slot more and use 2 running back sets with Jamal Williams in the backfield, it could work out. After this, we start getting into some no's for me. Now, Brian Hill at 2,800, he'll slightly be in play, but I doubt I'll have many lineups with him as of right now. He projects out for me for like 4.5 fantasy points. He's a decent value at just $2,800. He's a guy who, if he scores a touchdown like he did last week, yeah, he's one of those options that if there's 8 touchdowns in the game, will be in many more lineups because he's cheaper with upside than some of those kickers. Now, right now, I'm not liking it a ton because Todd Gurley is coming off of his best game. Todd Gurley and both Brian Hill really aren't seeing much usage in the passing game, although Brian Hill on just 24% of the opportunities, less than half of what Todd Gurley is seeing right now, 60% of the opportunities, has seen more targets, 7 targets on the year. He's seeing 7.3 opportunities per week. The issue is Todd Gurley, who's seeing right now like 4 opportunities in the red zone, close to 5 per week. You're getting no red zone usage for Brian Hill, so there's not as much upside in that department. Maybe he catches 1 or 2 passes, maybe he sees 5 carries on the ground, but you really need him to break one of those long ones for a touchdown because he's not being used at all right now in the red zone. So Brian Hill's in play. As much as I said I didn't really like Jamal Williams trending downwards, I prefer Jamal Williams because he's actually being used in the red zone and he's being used a little bit more in the passing game. Now you get to the Falcons defense, I'm not going to have interest. I know I mentioned that defenses in high scoring games are in play. I think the Packers can actually get pressure. The Packers offensive line allowing no pressure. Aaron Rodgers rarely makes mistakes. The only way the Falcons get you there right now is if Aaron Jones, who hasn't fumbled in a while, and Jamal Williams, who, believe it or not, has never fumbled in his entire career right now, Jamal Williams, if one of those guys fumbles and they return it for a touchdown, or even if they have a special teams return for a touchdown, right? And he gets 6 points there. I don't even know if that's enough. Like if they finish with 8 or 9 fantasy points, that might not be enough. They're very cheap, so it might be. But at 2,600, there's not a lot here working for them. They don't get good pressure. They're facing the number 1 offensive line against them, so it's going to be really hard to generate pressure. And they're facing Jamal Williams, who has never fumbled in his career, and then they're facing Aaron Rodgers, who doesn't throw interceptions, none this year. And then their best bet is like making Aaron Jones fumble, and I'm just going to bet that they don't have him fumble and return it for a touchdown. So right now, $2,600 not in play for me. And then some of these other Falcons receivers, as we scroll down a little bit more right now, and then we close out this show, these other Falcons receivers are just not going to be in play for me. If indeed Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones are going to be active. Right now they're questionable, but they were practicing in a limited variety over the weekend. And guys like Oli Z, I'll nickname him because he's got a very hard name to pronounce. Guys like Brandon Powell, the former Lion who just will not die, they're not going to be in play. They're not going to play. They run pretty strong 3 wide receiver sets, the Falcons. If Ridley or Julio out, well then yes, they both become more in play. Russell Gage becomes more in play. Powell, just to keep this in mind, Powell was the player who actually took over for Gage last week after Gage got concussed. He's a slot player, so Gage is already active. So Powell's going to be a pretty strong no for me. He did take over last week, Powell, and he played pretty decent. He saw 4 targets, brought in 3 of them, ran 22 routes. But now with Gage back, Powell is his direct backup, so don't expect Powell to do much of anything at $1,000. Same thing for Oli Z. He played because Julio was out. He ran 33 routes. He ended up seeing 6 targets, brought in 4 for 41. He's a good player. He has a lot of upside downfield, but he's just not going to step on the field if both Julio and Ridley are healthy. If they're both healthy, I have no interest. Next up, some of the tight ends. For the Packers, their backup tight ends. Mercedes Lewis, mainly a run blocker. He's played on 43% of the snaps, but just 11 routes this year. The reason why his fantasy points per game is a little bit higher, 3.4, is because he's seen 3 targets, and one of them ended up being a touchdown. He's not in play for me because he's probably going to run in this game like 4 routes, and maybe the play action passing around the end zone is where you would find him for a cheap touchdown. I'm not going to bet on that. Jay Sternberger, he only has 17 routes run on the year, but he saw all of his production last week. All 3 of his receptions and 36 yards all last week. The issue was he only ran 8 routes. So pretty much he was being targeted every time he was out there, which is good to see. Now with no Allen Lazard, maybe he gets used a little bit more. At $1,400, he's somewhat in play for me. I'm going to keep him as a no still because I think there's cheaper options that look a little bit better. He's just not getting a lot of usage. If his routes go from 8 routes like it was in week 3 to 20 routes, well then yeah, that would look fantastic. I just don't know if it gets there with Robert Tonyan acting as a tight end 1 right now. Next up is Malik Taylor. We need more news here. So keep an eye on the inactives and actives. I'll be live right around when the inactives come out on Monday night at around 6:30 or 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, so be sure to join in then. But right now I have this as a maybe. Malik Taylor has not yet ran a route for the Packers. Allen Lazard is going to be out, right? So I would expect Malik Taylor, if he's active, to slot in as like the wide receiver 4 or 5 because Darius Shepard has been getting the wide receiver 3 snaps for the Packers. He ran routes last week, but keep a close eye on this because if he is active, Malik Taylor could be the Jeff Smith of Thursday night for the Jets, where he actually gets a little bit of usage at $1,200. Again, right now I only have him projected for like 1.5 fantasy points, but at the price point right now of $1,200, if he's going to run like 15 to 20 routes, I don't think that's going to happen, but it could happen. He's going to be in play. We have to keep an eye on the actives and inactives. The rest of these guys down here are no's. Tyler Ervin for the Packers is kind of a sneaky end-around player. So far this year, he's ran 34 routes, which is kind of impressive, and he's seen 4 targets, and he has 4 attempts, mostly end-arounds. So he's basically getting like 3 opportunities a game at $800. I wouldn't hate you. I don't think it's crazy to play him, right? I have him projected for like 1.5 points as well. I actually do think there's a decent opportunity for his role to increase without Allen Lazard. As a running back who's kind of one of these like, you know, like trick players on end-around type players, I do think he can be involved. No interest in Ito Smith, no interest in Luke Stocker, no interest in AJ Dillon. He's just getting like 2 opportunities per game. Don't have much interest. Here's another one. Darius Shepard, all the way towards the bottom. You can see right now. I'll have interest here. Look, Darius Shepard last week without Devante Adams, he ran 15 rounds. Now he's technically on the depth chart Devante Adams' backup. The backup to Allen Lazard is Malik Taylor. We'll see if they actually believe in that or if they just give Darius Shepard the same amount of work. Shepard, in place of Adams last week, ran 15 routes. It was his first routes of the year. He was terrible last year. He was dropping passes. He was undersized. He was not a good player last year for the Packers. He saw 1 target last week and he was not able to bring it in. Look, Darius Shepard has not been a good player for the Packers anytime you've seen him, even in the preseason last year. So I'm not that thrilled about him, but he's $200. Like, he is the backup to Adams. So there's a good chance that the depth chart is right and Malik Taylor is actually the backup to Allen Lazard. But if they give Shepard the Allen Lazard snaps or some of them, and Shepard's going to run another 15 routes for $200 on the Showdown slate, it still doesn't seem great, but he's going to be in play just because of that opportunity, especially with Aaron Rodgers throwing you the ball. So Shepard's in play at $200. St. Brown may be in play, like if he's active, right? He could be the wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5. He's had the most overall well upside with Rodgers, but that was 2 years ago, right? He ended up getting hurt last year and basically missing the whole season. So keep an eye on St. Brown. Maybe he'll be active. Just keep an eye on the inactives. If all 5 of these receivers are active, meaning that Shepard, St. Brown, and Taylor are active, it's a little bit murky. But if only 4 are active, right? If they only activate, let's just say Malik Taylor and not St. Brown, it becomes a little bit more interesting to play Malik Taylor, a little bit more interesting to play Darius Shepard. So that's where I'm at right now. This week, more than any, is going to be very important just to see what happens with the other Monday night game if it's going to be played, just to see what happens with some of these other actives and inactives for the Packers wide receivers, also the starters, the starting wide receivers for the Falcons and Julio and Ridley. Keep a close eye on it. I appreciate you all tuning in. Before you go, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, hit that follow button on the podcast as well. If you take 2 seconds to hit the follow, hit the 5-star rate and review, it takes like 30 seconds of your time total. You can be entered into a raffle for a $50 giveaway via the podcast, the Sal Vetri Show on the Apple Store. If you have an Android device, the Stitcher, you can go there right now if you're watching on YouTube and check that out. And then also, Monkey Knife Fight, a 100% deposit match up to $50 Rootskis, code Vetri, VETRI, my last name, get you that match on player props. I like both of the overs for the quarterbacks this week on Monkey Knife Fight. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you all in advance. There'll be more content as the week goes on. You can check out my Twitter pinned up at Sal Vetri DFS. The pinned tweet will give you my schedule for the rest of the week. That tweet will be going up on Monday morning. So you can reference that and reach out with any questions. Thanks so much in advance, everybody. I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one.